Annual meeting of the congregation. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. So the agenda for today, you should have an agenda, and if you haven't seen one, we can pass one out to you. Two parts of the meeting. The first part of the meeting is the kind of official stuff, the election of officers and trustees in recognition of our volunteers. And the second half of the meeting, you're going to hear from the senior staff on the state of the church and their vision for the future. Before we begin, though, I would like Bill to please open us in prayer.
The presence of your Spirit for this hour of worship and praise and song and prayer. Now stay with us for this hour of business and reflection and visioning and planning and celebrating for this part of the people of God. We are thankful that we have each other, and we're thankful that you listen to us as a company of faith. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. And then I'm going to invite Scott Folks, our current secretary, and Ken Harris, past president, to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Under our bylaws, we require 50 members to be present or to vote via proxy in order to have a quorum, and I'm pleased to announce we have a quorum today, so we can proceed with our business. I would like to thank our only retiring trustee, George Zanatopoulos, who ably served us as chair of the Adult Education Committee for the past 3 years. George brought us a lot of terrific programming, and we thank him for his service on the board. And I'll turn it over to Ken for the slate for next year.
Thank you, Scott. It is great to be here, by the way. What Woody Allen says, 9/10 of life is just showing up. This is the other 1/10 right here, is showing up for really important things. So thank you all for being here. We have a great slate of candidates for the coming year for the Board of Trustees. In the president position, Meg Revord. Vice President, Peter Schaff. Treasurer, David Crossgrove. Secretary, King Poor will be new. He will be replacing Scott, who's done a world of service to the church in that position. I will remain as the immediate past president. Kelly Kenny will be our general counsel. And then we have 4 candidates for the board seats, 3 that are current board members and then 1 that is new. Chris Beer is going to be serving her second 3-year term. Scott Folks will be serving his first 3-year term. We keep drafting him into the executive committee for various functions, so now he will be returning to the board as a board member. George Wishart for his second 3-year term. And then finally, Melinda Hurley, who will be new to the board. And for those of you that don't know Melinda, I wanted to just give you a very brief bio on Melinda. She lives in Winnetka with her family, our husband Bill, 3 kids, Will, Paige, and Tyler. She grew up at KUC, going all the way back to receiving her Bible in 3rd grade. And so she felt it was good to rejoin her family as well as the congregation after she and her husband tried a few churches in the area. Like many of us, it was her kids who wanted to participate in youth programs that really drew her into KUC. And since the time that they returned, they've been quite busy, actually. They've been involved in mission trips to places like Cuba, where Bill was one of the assisting leaders. Bill also serves on the Allison Toby Smart Committee. Melinda has been very active in outreach. She is a liaison with JPA in particular. And professionally, she is in the residential home building industry, selling data to home builders. She's looking forward to working with KUC in new ways in her capacity as a board member, and we are thrilled to have her. So Melinda will be the newest member of the board, assuming ratification, which is what we're going to do right now. So I would like to pose this slate of candidates to the church for ratification. All people that would say aye, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We have a new slate. Appreciate it. I'll turn it back over to Meg.
Thank you, Ken and Scott. And thank you guys again for being here and really for all you do for the church. Some of the people who are here are some of the most committed to this church. Your support during the year has been amazing. Those of you who are online, thank you as well. Your generosity, your volunteerism, it's really what drives our church. And we have such a vibrant and supportive church community. We really have so much to be grateful for here. I would like to take a moment to thank our amazing staff. First, the senior staff, who has literally soared during one of the most difficult times for all of us and for churches. They're working overtime, lots of stress in their lives, and please join me in thanking them for their leadership and their vision and their faith throughout this last year. So our meeting format's a little different this year. Normally I would read their names, but I'm not going to do that because you're going to actually hear from each of them briefly and listen to what their vision of the church is, so you can see how amazing and wonderful they are personally. For the rest of the staff, I think of these people as our unsung heroes. They're the men and women literally behind the curtain. I think there's someone behind there, Joel behind there now, that make everything work so well for us and seamlessly. You too have endured a very difficult year and excelled in every respect. So thank you. We can't thank you enough, and I'm going to name our valued staffers as well. So we have Ryan Belangi, Alyssa Bennett, Greta Connor, Armando de la Cruz, Barbara Falk, Joel Fox, Victoria Garcia, Karen Gaynor, Michelle Gutowski, Jose Lara, one of our newest ones, Marie Pierre Labrie, Matt Lesky, Kate Revord, William Rockelman, Julie Samolcha, Olga Todorchuk, Sandra Wells, Tyler Yost, and then, of course, all of our AJN teachers and our choral section leaders. Thank you all for an amazing year. Our 2021 annual report is, some of you might have gotten it on your way in. It's in the back of the church as well, and it's available online. We hope this gives you a good picture for the perspectives on our achievements and challenges throughout the last year. You'll notice we've done a little different format, and thanks to Christine Hides and Christine Adams, and all those, John Sharp, who contributed to this amazing Herculean effort to get this out so quickly. So thank you. Looking on to next year, we have a lot of work to do and many great programs. We hope you all will get involved in the community and reach out. We need volunteers in almost every area of the church, so welcome you to whatever calls you. One of the big initiatives we hope to launch this year is a capital and growth campaign. Our many lean budget years have really resulted in deferred maintenance, dwindling reserves, a manse that, if you haven't been over there, is deteriorating, and church space that doesn't fit our programming needs and our other needs of the church and doesn't reflect our vibrant community. We did a lot of work a couple years ago to evaluate what our space needs were in light of our programmatic goals, and unfortunately, as you all know, we had to put these plans on hold. So we are now reviewing them again, reassessing our goals, and the pandemic has taught us a lot. But it's also reminded us a lot of the things that we already knew, and so in some ways it's very reaffirming of the work we already did. Some of the key takeaways that we had last time was that family, health, community, and faith remain at the center of our shared values. Youth, children and families, music, congregational care, and outreach remain our Kenilworth Union shared values and priorities. We learned we can be apart and survive, but we miss each other when we are apart, and we thrive when we're together in person. And we want our church space to feel like home, safe and secure, welcoming and accessible, comforting and comfortable, and like a home away from home. So we are reviewing this, and we look forward to sharing with you the vision as we progress. So thank you all for your support. And next, you'll hear from our senior staff, beginning with Bill Evertsberg. Thanks.
Hi, do you have copies of the annual report before you? This is on page 3. It's called State of the Kenilworth Union Church, and it's from your senior minister, some of the numbers that I find important during the fiscal year, which began on July 1, 2020. So I preached 40 sermons last year, 40 sermons out of a possible total of 53, a little bit more than 2 out of 3, a little bit less than 3 out of 4. When we were in seminary, they taught us to, at a place like Princeton Seminary or McCormick or the University of Chicago, these great American seminaries, they want to have an educated clergy and an educated laity. They want us to be prepared in our sermons, so they taught us that a rule of thumb is you ought to prepare 1 hour for every minute of delivery. So if your sermons are 12 or 14 minutes long, it means you need at least 12 or 14 hours of preparation. So my practice is that I read on Friday and preach, or write on Saturday and preach on Sunday. So about 40% of my time is spent right here. I did 12 weddings last year, which was, wow, that's so great. The most I did in a long time. There's a reason for this, of course. It's because there's a backlog from a quarantine time. Last autumn in 2020, I did 10 tiny weddings between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. 10, 12 people in the sanctuary or in a backyard. And now what's happening is we're catching up with that. So last Saturday, I married Eliza Solberg to Mike Ritter, a son and daughter of our congregation, which is just a joy. 240 people at Shore Acres Country Club. Last fall, we did 12 people in the Solberg's backyard. So that's what's happening to Katie and Christine and me this autumn. Last weekend, we had 4 funerals, 2 weddings, and a baptism. Katie did most of those. So that's 7 ordinances and sacraments of the church in one weekend. Katie never complains, one of the greatest work ethics I've ever seen. And so that's what's happening to us. Figure that I watch a little bit. It's baptisms to funerals. This is going in the wrong direction this year, but Katie's going to turn that around for us next year with new members and with new families. This is a significant number, 594 pledges, which is healthy for a church our size, but that's down substantially from 628 last year. So that's something to pay attention to. That's the bad news. The good news is we got the same amount of money, which is just incredible. We had a surplus this year. We had black ink at the end of the year, which in a stressful year like this is really encouraging. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your generosity. The most important number for me on this list is the 105K that we spent earlier this year on this. So early in the pandemic, we actually were better positioned to do virtual worship than many congregations because, and I credit Joe Forrest with this, Joe Forrest encouraged us strongly to have live streaming worship so that, I've told you this before, but early in their time of live streaming, I got an email from Becky Knight. She said, I am worshiping with your church right now from under a mosquito net in the Serengeti. So that's where we were before the pandemic. And we were really well positioned. But in the early, and poor John Sharp knows this about me, early in our years, I was watching all the competition. I was watching my colleagues who I thought were doing a good job. And I was crestfallen because our video quality was not as good as theirs. And I couldn't figure out what we were doing wrong. Our equipment was good. Our people were good. Joel Fox is a genius. Matt Lesky's a genius. John Sharp is the best there is. So I couldn't figure out, and John figured it out. It's the lights. Have you noticed how much bright? We had, before this pandemic, we had kind of a charming Gothic dimness in here. That's not a criticism. It really is atmospheric. You go to Notre Dame or to Westminster Abbey, it's gloomy. That was kind of nice, but it doesn't video well. So John fixed that for us by putting these monitors in the sanctuary and this lighting, and now we are at the top of our game. So that's the state of the church from my perspective.
morning. My name is David Crossgrove. I'm the treasurer of the church. My wife, Kim, and I were teaching the kids out in the Robinson Garden, so I dressed a little bit more casually today. As the son of a banker, my dad would be mortified that I'm delivering an annual report with no socks and no tie. So, Dad, if you watch this online, I apologize. So we, as Dr. Eversberg said, we have just ended an extraordinary year for the church. We entered the year, as everyone knows, well, first, we're a June 30 fiscal year end, and so we entered the year with so much uncertainty about the world around us, the economy around us, and so it's with your generosity that we had such a successful and extraordinary year. We ended, as Bill said, with a surplus, fairly sizable surplus. We plan for a surplus every year. We budget and operate very conservatively. We enter the year with a balanced budget, knowing that there's a lot of conservative estimates, and John has just been extraordinary with the accuracy around what we expect to spend. But we're very conservative. We expect to have a surplus. We had, I would say, a larger one than we maybe expected this year, and that's all due to the conservative operating of the church. Certainly, we had lower expenses than we would normally have, and we just didn't know what to expect because we didn't have some of the day-to-day expenses that we would normally have and want to have with people in the church. So we had lower expenses. Revenues were, receipts were just about the same. As Bill mentioned, one of the things that we all, are concerned about and want to track are the families that pledge and give to the church. We ended with around 590 this year. Last year we had around 635. The year before that we were back down to the 590 range, and the year before that we were back above 600. So we've kind of got this peak and valley that we're more or less leveling out at, and the pledges remain about the same. But thankfully, we operate very conservatively, ended with a very nice surplus. Add to that, we participated, as many church and organizations did, in the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP loan program. So without getting into all the details, suffice to say, we qualified for the program, and we had many people in the church on the executive committee, on the business committee, who were involved with this program in other parts of their lives. So we had, I felt very comfortable with the advice that we were receiving. We qualified and received a loan from the PPP program in the spring 2020, and fast forward to spring 2021, we qualified for and received forgiveness for that loan. So we had a combination of a surplus from our conservative operations and the wonderful giving of the church, as well as benefits from the forgiveness of the PPP loan. We combined those, shared some of it with our Joyful Noise preschool, who suffered much more greatly than we did as a church from the pandemic and attendance and tuition and all that. And then we gave basically the remainder of the amount, or I should say didn't give, but repaid money that we borrowed from the endowment for all the wonderful work that was done behind the church, above the church, below the church, outside in the spring of 2019. So we repaid some of the money that we borrowed from that. In terms of 2022, we again go into the year with a balanced budget with our same pledge level as we had in the last 2 years, so 2.2 million, which accounts for roughly 83 to 85% of our overall budget. So that's important for you to know, and for all the congregation to know, that that pledge money is the majority, the vast majority of the money that we operate from. So we feel very confident, even though there's still some uncertainty in our budgeting. We budgeted for a balanced budget. We hope to end the year with a little bit of a surplus. Couple things that are baked into that budget, as it was in prior years. We continue to give 10% of our pledge receipts to our outreach mission, which is very important to all of us at the church and the work that we do outside the church. We didn't, and we also did not plan to transfer an amount to the capital reserve, which we have not done in quite a few years. But as Meg said, we have big plans for a capital campaign and starting that soon. So I want to thank John Sharp. It's been such a pleasure to work with him over the last, 2 years now. He's going to come up next and talk to you a little bit more about his many duties. His title is appropriate, Director of Operations. It's not just finance. It's so many other things around the church. So thank you very much, and thank you, John.
Thanks, David. I, too, am not wearing a tie, but I am wearing socks, so it should be all right. So when I took this job 2 years ago, I assumed it would be a lot like my previous 35 years of work, finance and accounting. What I didn't know then was that the majority of the job would be related to the operations part of the Director of Business Operations role. In the past year, with tireless support from our custodial AV administrative staff, we've dealt with hundreds of live stream events, supported memorials, receptions, baptisms, and weddings. We've administered the maintenance and capital projects, including the HVAC retrofit for COVID, the technology and lighting upgrade to the sanctuary that Bill talked about, the build out of the new AV facility. If you haven't seen our new AV room, take a look. It's in the Culbertson room, you'll see it. The installation of the Robinson Garden fence, also if you get a chance. It's fairly idyllic back there now with a lovely new fence. And the removal and planting of several trees on the campus. Although most of these duties are not directly in line with the main purposes of the church, I believe our work in administration allows Bill, Katie, Christine, Lisa, Sylvie, and Amy to focus on what truly matters here in this place, the church's ministry. I want to thank Meg, Ken, Kelly, Scott, and Peter for their work on executive committee, which makes our job so much easier. And many thanks to Scott Bonder and Jerry James and Ann Carey for their tireless help on building and grounds, as those long-term projects can be drawn out and very detailed. As always, I thank the clergy and other senior staff for helping the newbie fit in. I've been here 2 years, but it feels like 2 years. Last, I especially want to recognize David Crossgrove for all the time and effort he spends in shepherding the church's financial resources. Thank you.
I was out teaching confirmation, so I don't have an agenda, sorry. So it's such an honor to work at Kenilworth Union Church, and I've been serving here since 2013, but I think many of you know that I have taken on some new responsibilities in the last year, so I'm in my first year of working with the Congregational Care Ministries at Kenilworth Union Church. Which is a deeply resonant, raw, tender, heart-filled ministry with volunteers who bring meals and write letters of hope and care to those who are sick and struggling, who pray for this congregation tirelessly, whether from home or here in this sanctuary, who connect with the most lonely, and who walk with those who are in a season of sorrow and hardship, which is so many of us. While the uncertainties of the coronavirus continue to impact our rhythms of gathering, the pandemic never stopped this congregation from offering robust care to one another. So I want to say thank you to my teams. Marian Hanold is the chair of Congregational Care, and she is on it. She is with me every week with more people to tend to and She knows what's going on in this congregation. And Sally Smith, while she is not officially on our congregational care ministry, she is at the heart of it, as you know. And so she brings her love to this congregation every week. And Diane Hart and Melanie Flynn are by my side for Stephen Ministry leadership, and I can't do this without them. So thank you to the Stephen ministers who walk with this congregation through every kind of sorrow. Things that had come to a halt, like Memorial Guild and Wedding Guild, are back up and running. And so we've had some truly beautiful memorial services and weddings in the last couple of months. The chance to gather is something that we no longer take for granted, being together in this sacred space. And I will say that it still seems like there's a little bit of our pre-pandemic life that's not fully yet been knit back together. There's some of our networks of hearing about one another's sorrows aren't quite as bound up as they maybe once were. So I encourage you to please let the ministers know when someone from our congregation is hospitalized, experiencing a new diagnosis or loss, going through a hard time. We have a network of care that we want to extend to anybody going through a hard time. So please help us be the eyes and ears. We depend on you. We also depend on you for sharing with your friends and neighbors that something sacred happens when we gather here at Kenilworth Union Church. And you're doing that. We are getting cold calls from new people in the neighborhood who are looking for a chance to baptize their baby, to bury their loved one, to have a wedding, to join our church. So thank you for the ways that you are building that network of love. I'm grateful for all of you, and if you haven't been part of the Ministry of Congregational Care and it's something that is tugging at your heart, I hope that you will reach out to me or one of the people that I mentioned. It is a ministry that will lift your heart, bring you to tears, and make your heart sing. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I think you all know me, but just in case, I am Christine Hides, and in January I began as the Associate Minister for Discipleship here. So one of my primary roles is leading children's ministry, and many of you are familiar with the frog logo, Forever Relying on God, that has been a beloved tradition here. And I will say that 2021 was the year that children's ministry became truly amphibious, being both online and in person. And so in the printed report, you can see the many highlights of the creative and innovative ways that we stayed connected as a children's ministry during a pandemic, including things like mailing birthday cards to all the children that included a Homer's ice cream cone gift certificate. And also you may remember the both traditional and technologically savvy event that was our children's ministry drive-through Christmas pageant with camel and podcast. So all of those things happened during 2021 and many more. And it turns out that the pivoting is probably not yet done. And so you might be asking, how is children's ministry doing in this constantly evolving environment? And the image of a teeter-totter has been our guide for the past 18 months. The one thing that we identified that never changes, no matter the weather or the pandemic numbers, one thing that never changes is our ministry purpose. And so our teeter-totter is built on that ministry purpose, and whether we pivot online or can gather in person, as we so love to do, we are solidly on that foundation of our purpose. And then the platform are the tools and the things that enable us to do online ministry and in-person ministry. So I am very deeply grateful for Diana Connolly, who leads the Children's Ministry Committee and that entire committee, as well as Tyler Yost and Greta Connor, who serve as children's ministry staff. I believe that we are ready for whatever the future holds in children's ministry. And then in January, I'll just say briefly, I've been working with the Adult Education Committee since then, just a few months now. But our hope is to create a robust, lifelong set of offerings in adult education for every age and every stage of life to grow in the faith and knowledge of Jesus Christ. And so throughout the pandemic, all of the adult education opportunities continued to happen. We had evening studies, daytime studies, Lenten studies, all of those things continued. And the committee and I look forward to collaborating with the racial justice team and the green team in the years and months ahead with the goal of growing and enhancing this already robust adult education ministry. So thank you all very much.
Good morning. I'll start with a number, 447. That's how many days the choirs were not together. And when we came together the first Sunday in June this past summer, it was otherworldly, it was heavenly. We spent a while without masks, and now we are masked again, yet we are together. And we're really very grateful for that. This past year has been interesting as we continue to keep all of our staff employed and busy making those little choir videos that then got edited into place. We did the same thing with the Rejoice Singers and with youth choir, and I really hope and pray we don't ever have to go back to that again. That was an experience. The youth choir is now back together. As a matter of fact, they're downstairs. We are masked, yet we are together. So youth choir is for grades 7 and 8, and all of those kids have been vaccinated. And as we wait for the younger kids to get vaccinated, we will be pivoting back once again to indoor singing. For now, when they're not vaccinated, we are not singing indoors at all. What we have, though, is we have a new program downstairs. If you want to see it, let me know, full of xylophones and colored bells, and it's really going to be quite amazing, hopefully. And the adult bell choir is thriving, and the chancel choir is thriving. And as we look to the future this coming year, I pray, please God, that we continue on the path that we are on, which is being together. Yet we know from this past year that even if we are not together, we're going to be just fine because we have each other. I would like to extend a special thank you to the congregation and the board, because when churches all around us, they were letting their music staff go. They were laying them off, and I understand they didn't have any choice. We found a way to keep them going. And I'm so incredibly appreciative of that, as are they. And now I'm going to go do youth choir. Thank you.
Be missing this meeting. I'm currently in St. Louis at a family member's memorial. But I still wanted to be able to give a Joyful Noises update. We are up and running and have already started a very successful school year. We have 15 teachers this year. Our mommy and me, mom and tots, twos, older twos, threes are all very full. We do still have a little room in JK. The question is, why does this excite me? This means our pipeline for next year is looking very, very strong. So that's always reason to be excited. We have taken everything we learned last year from COVID and taken those guidelines and really adapted them for this year so that we are able to still have a wonderful school year ahead, while at the same time keeping our kiddos, our families, our teachers, as well as our larger community safe. So I'm really excited to see how the year unfolds. Hope to see you guys all soon. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sylvie Pern, and I'm the Minister for Youth, Young Adults, and Mission, and I have held that role since January of this year. Prior to that, I was the Youth Director here, and I will say I'm not wearing a tie or socks, so I'm with you. Just got back inside from teaching 7th and 8th grade Sunday school, which we call Breakfast Club. I was really grateful when Christine Adams asked me to submit bullet points for the annual report this year, because that gave me a great opportunity to reflect back on what actually happened last year. I think much of the year, much of our ministries, our heads were spinning. We didn't know what to expect and how to navigate sort of naturally, so we all had to learn how to operate during COVID. It was a strange year last year by any measure. But we managed to have 172 youth and young adults actively participating in the programs here at church, which unfortunately is about 40% lower than the year before when we started out the year. So much of that had to do with COVID. We had to pivot into a model of, instead of just opening the doors and inviting youth in, they had to pre-register. We had capacity restrictions, so we had to have multiple sessions of classes and meetings. It was a lot of work for, lower attendance, which I think all of our ministries felt happening to them as well. There was a lot of work done. And when you look and you say, wow, we can only have 12 people in the room, then we're still doing the same amount of work. But it did work, and one of the things that we learned is that youth ministry is an in-person ministry. The programs that we attempted to do at the beginning of COVID that were virtual were just so poorly attended. We suspended some of them, and we made every effort to maintain safety levels to allow young people to continue participating at church. There was one exception among our young adults. We have a monthly program called Theology on Tap that I host the third Tuesday of every month. And we used to meet in a bar downtown, and since COVID began, we've been meeting by Zoom, and that has allowed participation by people who don't live in the area. So we've had people check in from Michigan and New York and San Francisco to be part of Theology on Tap. However, we do have some local people who are asking, when are we going to meet at a bar again? I hope it happens soon, but we're still meeting online for our young adults. And they still are very appreciative of that connection to the church. So I'm going to run down a few of the numbers that didn't make the annual report. The youth report is in there. Besides that, 172 youth and young adults participating last year. We had an average fall attendance of 7th and 8th grade youth group of 33 youth and leaders per week, which dropped in January to about 21 after the new year, and that normally happens. We were able to host a couple of special events. Our junior high youth loves special events, and we did a COVID-safe field trip to go tubing up at Wilmot in the winter, so we were outdoors, and it was fun, and because of capacity restrictions, we had to do 2 trips, and they were both full, which was great. We managed to pivot 1 million times and have a wilderness confirmation course last summer outside of Rockford. I don't know if you read my blog post about it, but we had to change locations from a planned trip to Wisconsin to Rockford about 2 days before departure, about 48 hours to make that pivot. But it worked, and we had a wonderful 11 youth participate in that, with myself participating and one other volunteer adult confirmation parent coming. This year, we had 17 youth go on the wilderness confirmation trip to the Pacific Northwest, and that was a great large group. It's the largest we've had for a number of years. We had impact meetings and service projects with 92 youth and adults attending through the year last year. Our June mission trip, however, was much smaller than normal. We had a trip to Tulsa in June, and 29 of us made up the mission team. But it was such a powerful experience to serve in Tulsa that we are returning. I'm planning an all ages, I will say all ages, but youth from 7th grade and up are welcome to sign up, and so are adults, to return to Tulsa November 11th to 14th of this year. You can certainly reach out to me if you're interested to know more about that possibility. We have a lot of youth leadership in this church. That's been one of my goals, is to get young people involved in leadership. We have a core leadership team that helps lead our youth groups. There were 15 high schoolers involved in that. We had 22 high schoolers on our Impact Junior Board. We had 2 high schoolers represented on the Racial Justice Committee, 1 on the Green Team. Our Communications Committee, Board Committee has 2 young adult representatives participating. We have a KUC Cares, which is a care ministry for teenagers by teenagers, and that was run by Eden Hunsader and Tessa Minturn last year, and this year Tessa Minturn's taken over because Eden has gone off to college. And Eden Hunsader, I must mention her again. She has been such a blessing to this church last year and through COVID. She organized Youth Sunday as her senior project for New Trier. It was an amazing experience, and I hope some of you were able to experience that. I can't say enough about her. And speaking about gratitude, I want to show my gratitude to the staff that I work with, and to the youth associates who are Kate Revord and Tyler Yost. I know Christine Hides mentioned Tyler. Both children's ministry and youth ministry each needed a part-time position, and Christine and I decided to work together to recruit a full-time person to work a bridge role for children's and youth ministry, to be in charge of or leading that transition from children's to youth. So Tyler is our bridge ministry coordinator for grades 5 through 8, and he is fantastic. I'm not going to bore you with any other numbers, but I am hopeful about the year to come in youth ministry, in young adult ministry, and in missions ministry. We are working on ways to get more adults and youth involved in hands-on outreach at this church, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you.